boy, that crowd in San Antonio was fantastic. Certainly they were really into it, and that main event did not disappoint. And it's been a rough couple weeks, and the trend continues if you've been fading the Fighting Nerds.
Welcome to First Strike, only on VSiN, the sports betting network. Here's your hosts, Dave Ross and Rob Moreno.
We are back. First Strike on a Monday. Dave Ross and Rob Moreno here with you and breaking down what we saw at Noche UFC. And then, Rob, we will take a look ahead. We get a week off here.
We do.
Everybody, so we'll be off on Friday.
Well-deserved, I think.
Yeah, right. I think we've earned one of these coming up here. But we will take a quick look ahead here in a couple weeks. But I want to talk to you about what we saw Saturday at Noche UFC. And I'll admit it, I'm watching college football. I'm on the road. I come back and catch up on the card after obviously knowing the results. And, boy, that crowd in San Antonio was fantastic. Certainly they were really into it, and that main event did not disappoint. Diego Lopes gets home against Silva, and it's been a rough couple weeks, and the trend continues if you've been fading the Fighting Nerds.
Yeah, it's been crazy, especially considering when was DDP versus Chimaev. Fighting Nerds still looked like the Fighting Nerds of that event, and very quickly things have turned 0-3. For the Fighting Nerds the last 2 weeks.
What'd you make of, again, people, if you're listening out there, we appreciate you watching, listening. I'm one of those guys, as Rob well knows. I'm looking for the mental stuff. And, Silva's just staring down Lopes the whole time for the entrance. I mean, and Lopes is doing his thing. He's getting loose. And what I'm getting at with the crowd, Rob, I was surprised how big of a fan favorite Diego Lopes has become. Because remember, we gave it out here Friday. That was my play, was going to be Lopes plus 210. I didn't really think that, win the crowd, win the fight. This isn't Gladiator. But I was surprised that really it was clear from the jump who this crowd was rooting for. Yeah,
they were chanting Lopes. Silva's trying to use that for himself, kind of playing the villain role in the moment. But yeah, props to Lopes. I mean, he stayed cool, calm. I mean, he was eating shots, especially you go into that second round, which is when it stopped. I mean, obviously the first round was all Diego. I mean, he doubled his takedowns, which congratulations. Now we saw what we saw, right? We knew he grapples. It's crazy. His numbers are still surprising me, but you go into that second round, the crowd's behind him. Silva's landing shots, but Diego's staying calm. He has his game plan. He's just waiting for those moments. I wasn't expecting the crowd to actually choose a side, considering it's two Brazilians. But there we were. I don't know if maybe people are starting to understand the Fighting Nerds differently, and maybe that's starting to come to fruition.
Well, I'll tell you this. You and I talked about it on Friday, probably talked about it this time last week on Monday, that if Diego did something that he hadn't seen since his debut against Evlev, where he actively, you look for a takedown or scramble on the ground. We saw some wild scrambles there too in that first round. But he not to say he did what we told him to do. I'm sure this is what his team told him to do, Rob. But that was where the advantage came, is that he was physically dominant on the ground against Silva. And again, to get there, he had to wade through fire. I thought that front kick, we might get another Anderson Silva knockout like we saw way back in the day against Vitor Belfort. And he just ate it and kept coming forward. And Gene got off big shots with his hands. And normally that's not a recipe for success, but eventually it was in this instance. So it was one of those, bite down in your mouthpiece fights. And I felt that's what Diego Lopes did.
100%. And I think he went in there knowing he was just going to have to bite down and eat shots. Take his worst. Don't get me wrong. As someone who's looking ahead to what Diego Lopes is about to continue doing, potential maybe future title shot again, it does worry me that he just goes in there willing to eat shots like that against a guy like, Gene Silva.
Yeah.
There's going to be guys that will eventually drop him. That we know the fight game's a cruel world, and those shots add up. But going in there knowing he just had to bite down, take Silva's worst, and know he could give him his worst. I thought it was interesting. I was rewatching the fight this morning, commentary, everything. And I guess in between rounds, they told Gene Silva, hey, you've seen his worst.
Yes.
You're fine now. And I don't know if that was the best thing they could have told him. Because if you see the moments before he gets dropped and split open with that spinning back elbow, he looked so confident that he was starting to find his rage and starting to figure it out. And that was his downfall.
And the interesting thing was, I actually thought the longer the fight goes, it might favor Lopez. It might have been the direct opposite. It really might have. That Silva, until that elbow split him open, if he could have survived that second round, and I'm glad that he didn't, because he took some vicious ground and pound there. And Diego, that's the other thing too. Even in that first round, could have been stopped in the first round. Glad they didn't.
Totally, yeah.
But he was actively, physically looking to posture up and use the ground and pound. Didn't look for the submission gain at all. I just thought it was a really impressive performance by Lopez. Stylistically, it showed something to me that he did not. I don't think he thought I can out-brawl Gene Silva, so he waited for those spots to get the fight down to the ground, and that's where the advantages really showed themselves. And Rob, that says to me fighter IQ.
Yep.
That forget about machismo.
Yeah.
Fighter IQ. This is how I can take advantage, and I thought he did that to a optimum level.
100%. I couldn't have said it any better. I mean, he showed maturity. He showed poise, especially in those dangerous moments. I mean, the commentary, the crowd, they're eating up those Silva shots just as much every time they're landing, and his head's cocking back. That front kick kept landing. You keep bringing it up. It was multiple front kicks,
right? And
he just stayed there, hands up, ready to go, and got his finish. So props to cash in that plus 210. I had Silva via knockout. That never really. I mean, hey, I enjoyed seeing a couple shots in there. I was like, okay, this man's alive. But we got there.
Oh, Rob, I'll say this though. Like I'm watching that because I wake up Sunday morning and I see my account and I'm like, oh, that's more than I expected. and when I went back and watched it, I'm thinking, you're on the Silva KO prop. That could have gotten home just as easily. I mean, he hit him with such flush shots that most people do not bite down and eat.
No.
And I thought that was the difference, right? Like most guys get out of the shots that Gene Silva hit Diego Lopez with. I think 90% of the time you would have cashed that ticket.
Probably so. So I don't feel bad about the bet.
Right.
Obviously the wrong side. Model had its rough night, but props to Diego Lopez. That was a fantastic fight.
And again, everybody, the Model crushed it in Paris 2 weeks ago against the Fighting Nerds. So this is what we do. If we knew all the outcomes, obviously, we'd probably be on an island somewhere.
Totally.
But yeah, I thought that the Model lean of KO prop for Gene Silva was a much smarter way to go because that's the only way he was going to beat him. And Lopez got that ground and pound finish.
And actually, speaking of like odds and everything like that, I don't know. I put it in the notes, but when I was rewatching it this morning, I noticed that I think I wrote it in here, with 57 seconds left in the second round, which is the round that the fight ends in.
Yes.
Silva, live odds on the broadcast. I don't know where those come from. I won't say. Silva was minus 230. Lopez was still plus 175. And it's funny because I took a screenshot of my screen, and when they flash that, Diego Lopez is on top of Gene Silva. And I'm like, I had to rewind. I was like, why are these live odds going? Like, what do they see differently?
and I'm miffed by it too. Sometimes I watch that and I go, wow. But I will say this, like rewatching the fight, knowing the outcome is very different.
Absolutely.
I'm still watching it, Rob, going, how am I going to cash this ticket? Like, where is this big? Because I knew obviously it was the final seconds of the second round.
Yeah.
And maybe that's even that thought, even though I knew the outcome, maybe that's where the live odds were coming from. Like, it looked like Silva had rebounded from that first round.
Like this will go to round 3 and Silva's back in control potentially. That's very true.
And if there wasn't a finish in round 2, could he have done it? I don't know. He really started to take a lot of punishment once that fight hit the ground there. Yeah. Before we look ahead here on the other card, on some of the undercard, we saw David Martinez beat Rob Font. That was on a short notice decision. He gets that done. So he catches it. It was basically a pick 'em fight, minus $1.05 there. And the over gets home there. Any takeaways here from the overall card or this fight in specifics?
Overall, the model had 6 fights. Well, it technically had 7 fights predicted. We got Cedric Dumas got.
Yeah, well, you would say no contest. Whenever he's in a fight, just know something chaotic's going to happen.
Jordan mentioned, will he even make the fight? I don't know if that actually happened. I don't know if that fight ever actually happened. So anyways, we only end up with 6 fight predictions, and we go 2 and 4. Tatiana Suarez was kind of the big favorite that the model had, and she gets there, but honestly not very impressive. I understand why she was on the prelims. I put myself through it, and I rewatched that this morning as well. So just to the listeners and to the watch, we put in the homework regardless of what the fight is.
That's right.
She seems just content grappling. And,
Yeah.
I realize like, and that's something to note going forward, right? It's just knowing that sometimes the model will like the numbers, but it doesn't mean they're going to put in the IQ or the effort to actually get any further along. I mean, maybe one submission attempt from her. I mean, Lemos, and honestly, in that third round, I realized why having Tatiana in any kind of parlay was a dangerous possibility, because Lemos kept fighting to the end of the bell and Tatiana was exhausted.
I'm so with you on that. I was disappointed in the fact that like Lemos is she's a dog. I mean that in the best way, DAGG, right? Like she just will not quit, and she's going to fight until she can't, and they tell her to stop after 3 rounds. And Suarez, like we just talked about with Lopes, with that top control, Diego looked like, I'm not going to look to submit you. I'm going to look to finish you. If you can't get a submission, you only attempt one, and you're in dominant positions. Like, come on. And now I'm with you. Like, you're on the prelims? No, I get it. Like Tatiana, we all were there with the Tatiana Suarez Express.
Hype train, yep.
That hype train has been derailed, even in victory. Kind of unimpressive in that one. So, again, I just thought it was a great atmosphere in San Antonio. I like that the UFC has done this and made this a yearly thing here with Noche UFC. Already looking forward to next year because the fans.
Shout out Kelvin Gastelum, who missed weight.
Yes, right. Who saw that coming? Always happens with Kelvin as well. So
still gets the win. Another reason why I just would have preferred just staying away from that fight, and I'm glad I did that.
If there are usual suspects for chaotic things to happen 24 hours before a fight, you could probably look to Cedricus Dumas and you
Kelvin
go to Kelvin Gastelum. Those are the two guys earmarked every time. We mentioned that we're going to be off this Friday because there's no UFC card this week. We'll be back next Monday. Take a closer look at what's going to happen at UFC Perth coming up here in 2 weeks. And tough to find some numbers here. You can find them in faraway places here. But when you look at Ulberg against Dominick Reyes here, and Carlos felt like that guy that could be next. Dominick, of course, a former champion in this division. What do you make of this far out?
Man, I've enjoyed watching both these guys. Dominick Reyes, obviously, we know, had a title shot many moons ago. Had kind of a rough patch post that title shot, but he's been bouncing back. And I've actually been excited for him to kind of see if he can get back to what he probably believed he could be at some point, right? I think, sometimes these guys run into a John Jones in the light heavyweight division. They're like, man, I'm never going to be champ. And mind you, he gave John Jones an amazing fight. Some people argue he could have won that fight.
Right.
The issue is that Reyes, after that, goes on a 3-fight TKO losing streak, and it kind of changes your image of, okay, maybe Reyes did really lose that fight to John Jones. But he's been on now a 3-fight knockout winning streak, and that's exciting, especially going up against, as we call these hype trains, Carlos Ulberg, right? He's got the look, he's got the record now. Which way does it go? I haven't run the numbers completely,
okay,
but I like Reyes as a dog right now. Just that plus 190 and, a guy that's been wrecking his fights. Ulberg has as well. I'm not taking that away from him. I mean, most recently, a decision victory over Jan Blachowicz. And, this guy's looked unstoppable as well. So it'll be interesting coming in 2 weeks.
And that's where I'll be curious to see where the numbers go because, being in Perth, right? So you get the Brazilian against the American here in Reyes. I don't know if that's going to factor into it or not. Who's going to be, the body clock, those sort of things should have plenty of time to hopefully get adjusted over there in Perth. But sometimes that can factor in just when you're fighting and where you are and which part of the world. I'm with you on Reyes, and it might have even been a Freudian slip if I called him a former champion because it feels like he won that fight. Like, he didn't win the fight against John, right? But I'm sure Alexander Gustafsson is like, yeah, I felt that same way. I'm sure Thiago Santos felt like there were guys that felt like they beat John Jones and didn't get the decision.
Yeah.
So that's where Reyes was, man. I mean, he was right there at the very top. So my lean this far out would be to the Reyes side. I'm just curious where we think this number might go in the next 2 weeks. And that certainly could skew the model. We talk about with Reed Kuhn all the time. Even though a favorite's a favorite, at some point, if they get out of whack, the model could say there's value in that dog, even if the percentage play could be still for the favorite.
Absolutely. And actually, that brings up something that I actually decided to think about over the weekend and just with the performance from the model this weekend and trying to find – I'm doing some tweaking over the next week of just trying to find those live dogs, right? Regardless if the model's pointing one direction, example, Jean Silva. But is there potential for a price just as plus 210, Diego Lopes. And I feel with the numbers, I may get a similar situation coming next week with Carlos Ulberg, who's looked phenomenal, unstoppable. His numbers are probably much better than Dominick Reyes, who suffered, 4 losses in a row. But can we get there with the price from the model? And it's just, I'm not exactly tweaking the type of predictions it's giving me, it's just trying to find more data out of what I've collected over the last 2 years.
Oh, I can't wait to talk to you next Monday about this. With Modelo. Very quickly on this card, we got a double Tafa, as you mentioned.
Double Tafas.
Rob, as we were talking about before the show, has anybody asked for double Tafa ever?
I don't think so. Very few, if at all. And if at all, one is the co-main event.
So we'll get Junior in the main event here. So double top. Look, Australian card, we get it. The fight that I might be most intrigued about this far away could be Neil Magny as a massive dog against Jake Matthews, right? Like, we know Jake Matthews, what he's going to do.
Yep.
We know he's going to have the crowd. Is Neil so far done that Jake Matthews should be a $6 betting favorite?
I don't think he is.
No.
I mean, I don't know if it's just my eyes and my stomach being like, ooh. I mean, currently, Jake Matthews minus 600, Neil Magny plus 425. It just sounds ridiculous. And yes, the second I saw the main card, outside of the main event, and looking, as I said, I saw Tafa and co-main, and I was like, oh no, what is it? What kind of card is this? But then I saw Jake Matthews, Neil Magny. I was like, that's a fight. That's a fight we could have right there. And yeah, I mean, Neil Magny, it's been a very back and forth career from what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a lot of red, green in his record, but he's a guy that's in it. I don't know if he's always out of it.
You better get him out of there, because if you let him linger and hang around, that's where this could be.
We talk about that fight IQ, right? He can think on his feet, so to speak.
Yeah, and I'm sure he's like, all right, he knows what the promotion's doing, right? He's like, you want to throw me the Wolves against the Australian in Perth? Great, no problem. I'll show up. So Neil Magny's
always down for a fight, which is always enjoyed by the fans.
We love that. Tom Nolan, again, that British flavor there over there as well. So he's on this card. And one other guy, Jimmy Crute, is going to be on this card as well, minus a $2 betting favorite right now. So that is all on deck in 2 weeks at Perth in Australia. Rob, great stuff. We'll do it again next Monday, so enjoy our Friday off, and then we'll be back.
Absolutely. Enjoy the Friday. We'll get back to it in exactly a week.
All right, there it is, everybody. So for El Modelo himself, Rob Moreno, I'm Dave Ross. We'll see you next Monday right back here on VSiN. It is First Strike.